Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal granted the credentials to the parliamentarians elected in the country's general elections held on October 18. Over 62 million people have cast their ballots in early voting in the United States, just 1 week before Election Day. Russia announced the request for pre-qualification and accelerated registration by the WHO of coronavirus vaccine candidate Sputnik-V. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Gladys Quesada. On Tuesday, Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal granted the credentials to the parliamentarians elected in the country's general elections held on October 18. The credentials were awarded to 36 senators, 130 representatives, and 9 parliamentarians to supranational bodies. Meanwhile, according to the timeline approved by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, Bolivia's President-elect Luis Arce and the Vice President-elect David Choquehuanca are expected to receive the credentials on October 28 to later formalize the official swear-in ceremony on November the 8th. The movement towards socialism gained 96 seats in Bolivia's plurinational legislative assembly, thus securing the process for the restitution of the constitutional and democratic order in the country after the coup against former President Evo Morales in 2019. This Monday in Bolivia, civilian groups in Santa Cruz, in the eastern part of the country, requested the armed forces to seize power, disregarding the overwhelming electoral victory of the movement towards socialism acknowledged by all opposition parties and several world governments. With slogans of "The homeland is in danger, military help," a group of Santa Cruz residents marched to the 8th Division Army headquarters to demand the armed forces to make their presence felt and attend to their request. According to reports from the local media, the demonstrators claim that they will stage a vigil near the military facility until they get a response from the Santa Cruz Regiment commander. No member of the de facto government has made any statement about these events. Leaders from the Indigenous Nationalities Confederation of Ecuador denied an alleged kidnapping of a police officer during the social unrest against the government last October, for which they are under investigation. The inquiry leaders are the president of the Indigenous Nationalities Confederation of Ecuador and Leonidas Issa, who have led the people and the nationalities of the Cotopaxi province. They both offered testimony to the Attorney General's office, where they claim to have taken part in the protests carried out nationwide against the neoliberal economic measures implemented by the executive office. Both Vargas and Issa are held responsible for kidnapping police officers at the House of Ecuadorian Culture last October 10th.
No nos vamos a esconder.
We are not going to hide. We will respond to the country. I believe, comrades, brothers and sisters, that the actions of last October 2019 were not those of a single leader. It was the Ecuadorian people as a whole. Outraged by so much corruption, comrades, decrees implemented under the orders of the International Monetary Fund. To prosecute the leaders who are currently the visible head of the movement, the October unrest was not in response to the leaders' summons. It was a response to the summons of the majority of the people and nationalities of Ecuador. Comrades, as a result, they are requesting our versions of what happened on Thursday, October 10th, in this case at the House of Culture, as indeed everyone knows that Comrade Inocencio Tucumbi was assassinated, and the only request at the time from thousands and thousands of families was a response to this crime committed on Wednesday 9th.
Sera hurricane has been downgraded to a tropical storm after making landfall in the Mexican peninsula of Yucatan. Rains and wind gusts are still hitting the area. The National Hurricane Centers of the United States has warned of hurricane swells. Sera hit the peninsula with winds up to 130 kilometers per hour. After downgrading, its wind gusts have slowed to 70 kilometers per hour. Its center is currently located at Espira municipality, moving towards the northeast of the country to exit into the Mexican Gulf, where it is expected to regain strength and become a hurricane again. And the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, stated that his policy seeks to return the administration of hydrocarbon and electrical industry to the state, following accusations of hindering investments in the energy sector made by 43 U.S. congressmen. Our correspondent, Eduardo Martinez, has the details.
The energy reform approved in 2013 continues to be rejected by a large part of Mexicans, who condemn the privatization of companies such as Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex.
Pemex was a very important public company for the country. It was a very good source of income for the country's economy, and now it is in decline.
Some remember that the changes to the law allowed the signing of contracts that only benefited national and foreign private capital.
If
there was any irregularity in the contract or to a party, which in this case would be the government, I believe that this situation should be reviewed. And even if everything is in order, it should still be verified.
President Andrés Manuel López Obrador insisted that his policy on the matter seeks to recover the leadership of the Mexican state over the hydrocarbon and energy industries.
Nosotros tenemos que defender el interés público.
We have to defend public interest, and I have always said it. The only business that should matter to us is public business. We have to defend the Federal Electricity Commission. We have to defend Pemex and not private companies.
Mexico's president so answers a letter signed by 43 U.S. congressmen accusing the Mexican government of obstructing investment in the energy sector, an action that, according to the letter, goes against a trade agreement signed with the United States and Canada known as TMEC.
Investors know very well that they have enough sectors to invest in Mexico, as long as the laws of Mexico are respected and there is no corruption. What happened in recent years is that foreign companies abused and looted the country because they bribed officials of the federal government.
The president recalled that the administrations of the so-called neoliberal period intended to dismantle public companies. López Obrador said they destroyed the refining area and deliberately reduced the capacity of power plants. The executive announced he could present a reform initiative to reaffirm that in matters of energy, the interest of the nation comes first. Eduardo Martinez, teleSUR, Mexico City.
Eduardo Martinez, teleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Addressing the nation, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, announced new social and economic measures on the occasion of the country's 41st anniversary of independence this Tuesday. The new measures will be in force starting January 2021 and include the permanent appointment of all temporary workers with the requisite qualifications. Meanwhile, nursing assistants who retired before October 27, 2015 will begin to receive pensions from the Consolidated Fund, and 600 people who were added to the special COVID-19 relief list will be made permanent on the public assistance list from 2021. Likewise, university students with economically disadvantaged loans will receive a complete waiver of interest for 1 year, while regular student loan interest will be reduced from 8.5% to 6%. St. Vincent and the Grenadines gained its independence from the United Kingdom on October 27, 1979. Over 62 million people have cast their ballots in early voting in the United States, just 1 week before Election Day. Young population, encouraged by the Latino community, turned out actively in the United states of Florida, North Carolina, and Michigan. Meanwhile, several national organizations have promoted the mail voting in order to avoid the cancellation of the vote for not arriving on time at the polling stations. Forecasts show that more than 100 million U.S. citizens will vote before the election day set on November the 3rd. Meanwhile, presidential candidates Joe Biden and Donald Trump continue their campaign activities to get support in the swing states. Democrat candidate Biden is rallying in Georgia, while President Trump mobilizes in Pennsylvania. On Tuesday, Cruz tried to beat back 2 out-of-control wildfires in Southern California that have kept tens of thousands of people out of their homes. According to the National Weather Service, fierce winds that drove twin fires through brushy hills near cities in Orange County a day earlier were expected to pick back up. Southern California Edison reported to regulators that it was investigating whether its equipment might have sparked the Silverado fire near the city of Irvine. The utility said a A wire that lashed a telecommunications line to a supporting cable may have struck a 12,000-volt conducting line above it. Utility equipment has been blamed for several destructive fires in recent years. This Tuesday, government spokesperson Ali Rabi said Iran will welcome a U.S. return to a landmark nuclear deal under any president, but noted that Tehran will require guarantees from Washington to not withdraw again.
It makes no difference to us which president in America decides to return to the JCPOA and stop creating obstacles for others in realizing their commitments. We would welcome such a decision by any president. But at the same time, while returning to the JCPOA, America should be ready to be held responsible for the damages that it has caused the people of Iran during the time it withdrew from the agreement. And of course, it must also be ready to provide other guarantees regarding not repeating such law-breakings.
Italian health authorities have noted a severe increase in the number of COVID-19 cases across the country, recording the highest number of new COVID-19 related fatalities since May the 5th, at 221 fatalities this Tuesday. Meanwhile, demonstrations have increased in the country over the new COVID-19 restrictions measures imposed by the government, which include regional curfews, evening shutdowns for restaurants and bars, and the closure of gyms, swimming pools, and theaters.
The situation is that of a widespread generalized epidemic. We are not seeing what happened in February and May, when all the cases were concentrated in a limited area of the country. We see a growing epidemic trend. The rise has been stronger over the past weeks. Fatalities are still relatively, I repeat, relatively few, and the state of intensive care units stays below the warning level, especially since the number of units over the past months has been increased. I believe that in this moment, the appeal made by both experts and politicians to avoid unnecessary and non-essential contacts is a crucial call to lower the epidemiological curve right now and to continue with our activities, with sacrifices, and with the necessary safety rules.
On Tuesday, the government presented its draft budget for 2021, funded by the European Recovery Plan and increases in corporate and high income taxes.
This represents the largest public investment and in particular social investment in our history. I would like to say this in figures: 239,765 million euros. That is 10.3% more than the previous ones, including the advance of the 27,000 million euros from the European Recovery Funds, reached as an agreement last July. We are going to allocate 3,064 million euros more to health, a 151.4% increase. I believe that one of the great challenges, one of the great lessons that we must learn from this health, economic and social emergency is to strengthen policies as important as public health and the defense of public health for all citizens. We increased the corporate tax for large corporations by limiting the exemptions for dividends and capital gains generated by their participation in subsidiary companies. We raised the wealth tax by 1 point for assets of more than 10 million euros. We raised 3 points the income tax for capital income of more than 200,000 euros. We increased the personal income tax by 2 points for incomes of more than 300,000 euros.
2 crew members of a Greek warship were slightly hurt on Tuesday after it collided with a Portuguese cargo ship off Piraeus. There were 27 sailors on board the Wine Spear at the time of the accident, who were rescued by Coast Guard patrol boats. According to the Merchant Navy Ministry, the vessel suffered serious damage to the stern and it was towed back to a naval base on the nearby island of Salamina. The other vessel involved in the collision was the Merck Launceston, which sails under a Portuguese flag. An inquiry is underway into the cause of the accident. Russian Direct Investment Fund representatives have announced the request for a pre-qualification and accelerated registration by the World Health Organization of coronavirus vaccine candidate Sputnik-V. In a press release, the representatives noted that the COVID-19 vaccine candidate Sputnik-V is based on a well-studied platform of human adenoviral vectors, while highlighting that Russia is one of the first countries in the world to apply to WHO for pre-qualification. Russia registered the world's first coronavirus vaccine, Sputnik-V, on August 11. Meanwhile, another Russian COVID-19 candidate vaccine, Corona, was registered earlier this month, and its production has already started. On Tuesday, Chinese authorities urged the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to cease the anti-China rhetoric and to avoid acts that undermine regional peace and stability. The remarks come after the arrival of Secretary of State Pompeo in India on Monday to conduct official talks, which also include meetings with authorities in Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Indonesia.
We urge Pompeo to abandon the zero-sum Cold War mentality, stop hyping the so-called China threat, stop sowing discord between China and other countries in the region, and stop erroneous acts that undermine regional peace and stability. We urge the U.S. to stay committed to the One China principle and provisions of the 3 Sino-U.S. joint communiques and revoke the arms sale plan to Taiwan, so as to avoid further damage to China-U.S. relations and peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. China will take legitimate and necessary measures to resolutely defend national sovereignty and security interests.
United Nations officials have noted that at least 80,000 children under 5-years-old in Yemen could die from severe acute malnutrition, while at least 250,000 pregnant or breastfeeding women need treatment for this disease.
Acute malnutrition rates among children below 5 years old are the highest ever recorded in parts of southern Yemen, according to the latest integrated food security phase classification. The most significant increase is among young children who suffer from severe acute malnutrition. This is a condition that leaves children around 10 times more likely to die of diseases such as cholera and diarrhea, malaria, or acute respiratory infections, all of which are common in Yemen. The new number released today is up 15.5% since January, for a total of at least 98,000 children.
International envoys mediating the crisis following last week's disputed election in Guinea urged the government on Tuesday to lift a blockade of the home of opposition leader Cellou Dalein Diallo. Representatives from the United Nations, African Union, and the 15-nation West African bloc, ECOWAS, said in a statement that Guinean authorities must lift the barricade in the spirit of inclusive dialogue. Police have barricaded Diallo inside his house for days as post-election clashes between his supporters and security forces raged last week, killing 21 people.
The delegation regretted the acts of post-election violence that resulted in loss of life and destruction of public and private property. It expresses its condolences to the bereaved families and wishes a speedy recovery to the injured. The joint mission also called on the Guinean authorities to expedite investigations to shed light on the violence in order to bring the perpetrators to justice. It calls on the authorities to ensure that the defense and security forces act with restraint and professionalism in managing the demonstrations.
On Tuesday, 3 people were killed in Afghanistan capital Kabul in a car bomb attack. According to Ferdous Faramas, spokesperson for the city's police chief, 10 other people were wounded in the attack. No one immediately claimed responsibility for the bombing, but both Taliban and Islamic State affiliates are active and have claimed previous attacks in the city. The violence comes as the UN mission in Afghanistan released its third-quarter report, showing a 30% decrease in civilian casualties. However, the UN report pointed out that the conflict in Afghanistan remains one of the deadliest in the world for civilians.
This is not a road mostly used by security forces or foreign convoys. I don't know what the target was. We evacuated around 10 to 15 wounded and dead bodies to hospitals from here.
On Tuesday, tens of thousands of protesters marched through the Bangladeshi capital after French President Emmanuel Macron defended cartoons depicting the Prophet Mohammed. Protesters called for a boycott on French products and burned an effigy of France's president. Police estimated that more than 40,000 people took part in the march organized by an Islamist party, which was halted before it could get close to the French embassy in Dhaka. Hundreds of officers used a barbed wire barricade to stop the protesters, who broke up without violence. The French leader has been on target of the protest in several countries over his comments. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.